Welcome back. This is part 2 of how to crochet a mini doll. In part 1 we did the head, the body, and also the hair cap, and we also stuffed the body and closed it up together. If you missed part 1, you can find it up here in the iCard and also in the description box below. In this video, part 2, we're going to do the face, we're going to make the arms and then sew them to the body, and I'm also going to show you how to do the hair. So in the next clip we're doing the face first, so you need a strand of black yarn and a strand of skin colored yarn and your sewing needle. I'm using a blunt end sewing needle for the entire face. So grab what you need and let's get started. And very simple, just a couple of wraps of yarn. We're going to start with the black first. We're going to put the eyes in first. And we're going to bring our needle through the top of the head. And remember, we want where we slip stitch that final stitch of the row in the back of the doll. So that will be the back, and we don't see any inconsistencies in the front of the doll. And we're not going to worry about yarn being up here because remember we're sewing on a hair cap, so it's going to be covering up anything we do up here. We're going to bring the yarn needle through the top of the head and out in between the 6th and 7th row. So here's row 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So in between there. Now we're going to wrap the yarn around the 6th row once or twice. So just bring one strand through and I'll leave the other one hanging up top. I'm going to wrap around that 6th row once, and I'm not going to pull too tight, otherwise it'll alter the shape of the doll. There was once, and here is twice. And if you see any stuffing being pulled through, just push it back in with your needle. So there's my one eye, and now I'm going to go over to do the other one, and I want 3 visible stitch holes between them, just like I did for the safety eyes. When I go in, I'm just going to bring the needle back a little ways behind the stuffing so you don't see any black yarn in between the eyes. So that's too high. I'm going to come right over here, and there will be 1, 2, 3 stitches in between. So I'm going to pull it through, not pulling too tight. I'm going to wrap twice here, once and twice. Now we're going to make the mouth, and again we're going to bring the needle behind the stuffing a little ways. Make sure that it holds the yarn behind the stuffing and we don't see it through the doll. And we're going to come out in between the 8th and 9th row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So down here, and I just make a small little mouth. You can do whatever you want to do. This is just how I did mine. Doesn't mean it's the best way, it's just the way I've done it. I just wanted to keep it simple. So I just go over a little ways. I'm just making a tiny little mouth. When I bring this back up, I'm going to come up 1 stitch hole over from where I went in. And I'm going to pull that through, and again, not pulling too tight. And that's it. Now I can knot these 2 off up here. And I'm just going to cut that short. And I'm going to leave this knot on top of the head. So you can see the nose is wrapped 1 row below the eyes. So we're going to wrap around this row right here. And if you want to count the rows, you come out in between the 6th and 7th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. In between, pull it through. And now I'm going to wrap around the 7th row. Just a number of times until I'm happy with the size of the nose. I just do a few wraps. Once, twice, 3 times, and 4. I'll do one more, and 5. And that's all we have to do for that. And I'm going to bring this over here and come up right on top of the eye, and I'm going to wrap over twice this way just to create a little eyelid. Good enough, and now I'm going to come over here and do the same thing. And now I'll knot these off at the top, just the same way I did for the black yarn. Next we're going to make the arms, and we start at the top of the arm and we work our way down, and the arm and the hand is two different pieces. The arm part has only 3 rows in it, and I'm going to walk you through each of those 3 rows, and the arm has no left or right. We make the same piece twice. In row 1 is a loop with 6 single crochets. This is the same loop that I showed you at the beginning of the head tutorial. Instead of making 7 single crochets, we're going to do 6. So insert our hook, bring the yarn underneath those 2 strings. Now we're going to make our slip knot. Now we can get ready to crochet on. We're going to put 6 single crochets into this ring. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and last one, 6. Now we're going to close up the ring. I'm going to pull out that starting yarn tail so it doesn't get tangled up. Pull on one of these 2 strings. And again, if you need a little bit more time to work on this ring, remember I do have 2 separate tutorials that will show you how to do a magic ring, and you can watch those tutorials and rewind them as much as you need to until you feel comfortable making this ring. Rows 2 and 3 is 1 single crochet in each one of those 6 stitches. We're going to do this together because it is a little bit difficult to work in these smaller rounds. You can see all your stitches here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. We're going to go through the first one, making sure we go underneath both strings in that stitch. There's our first single crochet. Now going into the second stitch. There's 2. Going into the third one. Now into the fourth. And by now you'll start feeling it folding up on itself, and that's okay. Fifth. And last one, you might have to pull back so you can see it clearly. Number 6. And we finished row 2. And it is folding up on itself, so I'm going to stop and I'm going to turn it right side. I'm just going to push where that starting yarn tail is coming out of, inward. I'm going to cut up the starting yarn tail shorter, and I'm just going to tuck it inside the arm if I need to, or I can just crochet around it. So this is the last row. We're going to put 1 single crochet in each one of those 6 stitches. This is row number 3. One, 2, 3. And what I do, and I can't totally see what I'm doing, I just turn it towards me and I can see the top of the V, or the top of the stitch looks like a V, and I'm going to go right underneath that. There's 4, and I'm relaxing, I'm not holding everything so tight. 5, and we have 1 more to go. 6. And we're done. Now we're going to slip stitch the next stitch and finish off. So just go into the next one. Instead of yarning over, just pull the first loop through the second loop, and we're done. We're going to finish off, leave a bit of a tail for sewing. You'll use this tail to sew the arm to the body. Pull that yarn tail through that loop. Now this starting yarn tail I can cut even shorter. And I'm going to get rid of this yarn tail. I'm going to bring this yarn tail up here. And if I pulled anything up, I'm going to pull it back down, straighten out the arm. And now I can knot off up here and leave it hanging. I'm going to use it for sewing. So the closed part up here, that's the top of the arm, and the open part is where we put the hand, and we're going to work through both sides of the arm. So we're going to push our hook right through both sides, right on the far right corner. Lay our skin color over and pull it through. We're going to get ready to crochet on. Hold on to that yarn tail in the back and then switch fingers when you're ready. Now chain one. In that same space, put a single crochet, going through both sides. Now you can let go of that yarn tail in the back. Now here you can crochet around it for the next two spaces. We're going to be putting 2 half double crochets into the next 2 spaces. And so we don't have to weave this in at the end. We can give a little tug so it's nice and tight, and then crochet around it. When we do a half double crochet, you yarn over before going into the space. So yarn over and into the next space, push your hook through. Might have to work at it a little bit. There we go. Hold that starting yarn tail over the hook, pull my yarn through, and I have 3 loops on my hook, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. So there was my first half double crochet. I'm going to put a half double crochet in the same space I was just in. So yarn over, pushing through that same space, hold the starting yarn tail over the hook, pull the yarn through. I have 3 loops, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. And now we're going to put 2 half double crochets into that last space. So yarn over, going through, hold the yarn tail over the hook, crochet around it. Sometimes you catch a little bit of yarn inside and it grabs your hook, so you just have to work slowly so you don't frustrate yourself. Yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. And now last one, yarning over, pushing through. I'm just going to wiggle my hook until I can get it through. There we go. And I'm done. Now I'm going to break free. I'm going to leave a little bit of a yarn tail for sewing and making a thumb. Pull the yarn tail through that loop and pull tight. I can cut the starting yarn tail free. So I'm ready to make my thumb now. So I'm going to bring this yarn tail just down here and through to the other side. Just bring it down and give it a little tug, but do straighten it out so it doesn't pull it all the way in. Now I'm going to wrap the yarn tail over a little bump just like that and through that same space. And now I'm going to pull tight. And that just creates a little separation for a thumb. I'm going to carry this over here and I'm going to knot it off over here on the other end. I could have knotted it off here, but it just might be easier to work with over on this side. Now I'm going to knot it off so it holds that thumb. Go through that loop and pull tight. There we go. All done. Now I can just bring this up through the end of the arm, pull it through, and cut free. Alright my friends, remember there's no left or right, so we're going to make another arm and hand exactly the same way. So if you need to, you can just back up this video and watch it again and get the second arm made. Before we sew on the arms or add the hair, it's probably easier to do the belt first, and you can do the belt a couple of different ways. You can make a chain or just simply wrap the yarn around, and I brought the yarn in a way where I kind of sewed it in at the same time, making it a little bit decorative, and then it's just sewn in the back. Same as the chain, it's loose in the front and it's just sewn in the back. So if you wanted to make a chain, then you would do a length that would fit around the belly, and I forget now how many chains that is. I think let's go with 23 to start with. So I'm going to chain 23. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, I just tried it, and 23 is a good number for me because it is snug enough to keep it in place without overlapping in the back. So you want, when you wrap a chain around, you just want the ends to just touch, not overlap. Now, like I said, you can sew it where it's loose in the front and just sew the back, whatever is easiest for you. And I go right, you could make it higher or lower, it's totally up to you. I'm going to go through here. Now if I wanted to keep the front in place, I would come right through the front and through the chain itself and pull it through. And then I'd go over a chain and back into the body and out the back. And again, don't pull anything too tight because it just alters the shape. Just snug enough to keep things in place. Okay, so that part is done. So I'm just going to knot it off here. Okay, that's knotted off. And I'll just bring this down here anywhere, pull on it slightly and cut. Now the other side, I just have to knot it off because the front's already done. And the hair is going to be covering all of this anyway, so I'm not too concerned about what it looks like back here. If you wanted to pay more attention to the back, you can totally do that and make it as neat as possible. But none of my dolls look neat underneath that hair of theirs. I just kind of threw some knots in here to hold everything in place. And now I'll just bring this down here and again cut it free. And there we go. Now we're going to do the arms, and just take a look at the arms and make sure that the thumbs are going to be facing the right way. And there is a neater side to both of them and a little bit of a messier side. The messier side I always make the inside where it won't be seen, and the nice neat sides on the outside. And if the thumb is facing the wrong way, then you can just rearrange it. You can pull it into shape and make it face the right way. Like I said, there's no right or left. And the top goes right here, and it's just a couple of whip stitches from the body and through the arm to hold it in place. And I just want a couple more up here, just make sure it stays in place. I think this is done now, so I'm just going to knot this off in the back. Go through that loop and pull tight. And same thing, whip stitch the other side in. Just take a moment to make sure everything's lining up and they're going to be even. And that looks good right there. So I'll just go ahead and I'll whip stitch this one into place. In the next section we are preparing the bundles of hair, and I didn't tell you how long those bundles should be if stretched out, so you'll see me wrapping yarn around the hand like this and a number of times. I'm just going to cut this here so you can see. Once I cut through the center, I'm going to have strands of hair like this. When stretched out, they should be at least 12 inches long. So this would be the hair length right here when you put it on the head. And if it's 12 inches long, that gives you at least 6 inches on each side that you can work with. You'd rather have the strands too long than too short. In the end, we end up trimming the hair, of course, but we want something to trim, so don't make the strands too short. They should be at least 12 inches long once stretched out. So all that's left now is the hair, and I'm going to show you what I've done here. So we have the hair cap. I have 2 bundles of hair, like this, and then they have the ties on top. So there's 2 of these. I have 3 braids. These braids are between 4.5 and 6 inches long, I think. Let me see. This one is 5 inches, and I think the other ones are 4.5. A little bit better than 4 inches. So you want them to be at least 4 inches long for the side braids. That's these ones here. And you can make them thick or thin. This is thin here. I made a couple of thick ones. And then the top one is longer, and it's going to go on top of the head and get sewn in over top the hair and the other two braids like this. And then we have our bundle of hair, and that gets rooted to the hair cap. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you all of this with yellow yarn, because the brown that I chose is so dark, it's almost like trying to show you with black yarn. So it's going to be very difficult to do that with that color. So let's bring in the yellow and I'll show you what I've done here. And don't let all of that intimidate you. It's very easy once you get started. It's just a matter of wrapping yarn around your hand, really. So let's do that now. For these yarn bundles, you can make more than two if you want to. What I do is I just loosely wrap around my hand. That was 3 times. 4, 5, 6. We can do 6. 6 is good. So there's one. I'm going to wrap the other one here. There's my other bundle. And now I need to tie off the center of each bundle. Tie it off, tie tight, or pull tight I should say, and now the other center cut through. You prepare the other bundle the exact same way, and then you set them aside. Make sure that the ties don't get mixed up with the rest, because you want to use these to tie to the top of the head, of course. These bundles are used to add a little bit of bulk in the hair. I sew it to the front. You can make more that can be sewn in the back. It's totally up to you. I didn't think it needed it. This is the doll that I worked on here. So these are the 2 bundles sewn to the front of the hair, and I didn't think it needed any more than that. But you can of course make some. So again, like I said, set these aside, keep them nice and neat and away from the possibility of being tangled up, and keep those ties away from the rest of the bundle. So next we're going to make the braids. This one we're going to make 3 braids. We don't have to wrap that many times. So in the pattern I said wrap 3 to 5 times. If you wrap 5 times you're going to get a thicker braid. I'm just going to do 3 times here. I'm going to cut through the center. I'm going to tie off the center. And now I'm going to use my glue bottle here to hang on to this for me. So I'm just going to wrap a nice little bow around here. I'll do a bow so when I'm done with it, it will let go. And then you want to tie for the end when you're done. So I wrapped 3 times, which gave me 6 strands of yarn. So I'm dividing them into 2, and now I'm just going to go ahead and make my braid, wrapping over and under. So I've gotten to the other end. Now I'm going to tie this off. So I'm just going to wrap around twice. And right about now it'd be nice to have another set of hands, hey? We're going to tie that off best we can. There we go. And now we can let this go. So go ahead and make 2 more of these. And you do want the ties long enough for sewing. I do use the braids to hold everything into place. Everything's been sewn here, so nothing is going to be flying around and getting tangled or messed up. The braids keep everything nice and neat. And actually you could do 1 more braid. I said 3 braids in the pattern, but she's got another braid here at the bottom that kind of holds everything in place as well. So the choice is yours how many braids you want to make. I'm just going to go 3 with this video, but you can certainly add another one when we're all done. So we made our braids in the 2 hair bundles. These are the 2 hair bundles that get sewn onto the cap after the cap is sewn to the head. But first we have to root some strands to the cap. So you also do a bundle of strands that you're not going to tie off. You're just going to leave them loose, because we're going to root them one by one to the cap. And we're going to go down the center of the cap, and we're going to go 2 strands side by side down the center. And we're going to turn it this way. The sewing yarn tail should be in the back, and we're going to start 1 row back from the edge. So here's the center here. We're going to go on either side of the center, push your hook through, lay your yarn strand over your hook, and then pull it through. And now pull the 2 yarn tails through that loop. There's our first one. Now right behind it, put another one. And keep going all the way to the other end, going in a straight line backwards. So what we're doing is we're making the, say if your hair is parted down the center, you'd have hair on either side. That's what we're doing. So I'm not going to go all the way to the end because I want to actually put the brown hair in here, and I'm going to have to undo all of these by hand, so I don't really want to spend too much time doing this. So now I'm going to go right beside this line, and I'm going to do another line that goes all the way back to the other end as well. And again, you're taking this line from the second row all the way to the last row, and you're doing 2 lines side by side. So there is my cap all ready to be sewn on, and you can see it's not totally a straight line, and I'm not too worried about that because there's going to be a braid that goes over top of that. So this is the second time I'm going to sew this in. The first time I did it, I sewed it too close to the eyes, so when I started sewing this hair in, it was covering up the eyes. So just make sure, I'm feeling a little bit tired right now because it's kind of late at night, just make sure that the cap sits like this when you put it on the head. So you have this much space in front of the eyes, and the back of the cap should be sitting right pretty much on top of the body, just like so. So when we sew the hair pieces in here, we're not at risk of covering up the eyes, and that's what I had did previously. You didn't see it because I'm not going to show that clip because it's just a waste of time. So now I know I have enough space for my eyes, and adding more hair after. Now I'm going to sew it in. And I have to bring in another strand of yarn here because I've had to cut this hair free. I had sewn it in all the way around and then realized, oops, too close to the eyes. Uh-oh. And I'm putting about 1 inch in between my holding stitches here. I don't need to sew like side by side. I just need to hold the cap onto the head. So that just takes holding stitches all the way around, but nothing that needs to be so close together. Now I'm back where I started. I'm going to knot off the starting and end yarn tails. And I can just leave those hanging. There, that's better. So now I can put my yarn bundle. I'm going to take my first bundle, and it's going to get sewn in on top of the cap, right here. So I'm just going to pull it in, and I'm going to pull it fairly tight. There we go. That looks good. Now all I have to do is just knot it off here and then just leave it hanging like a strand of hair. I'll sew the other one in, right beside where the first one went in, onto the cap. I went into the head a little bit, through the cap, and I'll pull it through. And same thing, I'm going to knot it off here. Oh, that looks pretty good. Okay, so now I'm going to do my braids, and I'm going to show you how that looks with the yellow first. And I go above the eye, right here, and then I would carry this yarn tail back, and then you use the braid to hold the hair back. And then I tie the other end in right here. Okay, I'm going to sew this right to the head. And I go in, and then I'm going to come up the top, and I'll knot it off up here. Now let's do the other one. They look so pretty when they're in place, but while you're working on it, it kind of is doubtful. Sometimes when I'm working, I'm like, oh my gosh, this isn't going to turn out. But in the end, if you just keep with it, it's so pretty. Alright, so the last one, and this one gets sewn right over top these two, and it kind of just finishes them off. And again, it's just going to bring it through and right out the back center underneath where that braid will go. And I'll use this yarn tail to sew it to the back of the head, and it holds everything in place. So the last thing to do now is just trim this here, and I'm going to go right to the bottom of the doll. There we go, all done. And I did change my mind about the belt. I didn't like her black belt on there, so I just wrapped yarn around a couple times and tied it off. You can do a number of things for the belt. Anyway, there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed making yourself a little doll. And if you did make one of these, I'd sure love to see her. You could post pictures on my Facebook page, Amigurumi Freely, or tag me on Instagram. Both of those links are in the description box below. Anything else that gets related to this pattern that gets uploaded here to YouTube will be popping up on your screen. Until then, I'll just put a couple of links up here, and if you're interested, you can click those. And until next time, guys, I hope you enjoyed that, and we'll see you super soon.